Goodbye Eri is a one-shot manga by Tatsuki Fujimoto, who created works like Chainsaw Man and Look Back, which is a one-shot manga that I just made a video of just about 2 seconds ago. And yeah, I said I was gonna make a Goodbye Eri video, so here it is. And you will go through another emotional roller coaster in this one. And he does a fantastic job once again of creating a story that you can get through in about an hour and a half, and like a movie, a cinematic. And you get the full don't know what's going on, learn some characters, you get into it pretty quick. This one was very, very fast to kind of hook me because it feels unique, and it ends with a little gut punch, and you just can't help but feel bad for the character that we're going through this story with, Yuta, who he just loss and then hope and loss, and yeah, you feel that hopelessness. But this one has a better ending than Look Back perhaps did, because the ending is like the icing on the cake that we do not deserve, but we got anyways. And without it, you would just be left once again just hopeless. But thank God that he did it this way, and it's not cheesy, it's not cliche, it's just beautifully handled. And like the premise of the story, it was done just so uniquely, and I'm thankful for that. So yeah, we follow a young filmmaker, his name is Yuta, who starts making a movie of his terminally ill mother in her final moments. And she buys him a smartphone to make video, and now her request was, hey, can you film my death? I want you to film, me so you remember me, so I don't, my legacy doesn't die here. And he does that, and he ends up filling the camera all the way up. So they go and buy him a computer or a camera, and he was able to go and get more storage there. And literally, when he's not in school, he'll be filming his mom, and he gets a couple other things. And as you come to find out, she wasn't always appreciative of him doing more of his artistic own desire. She was really wanting him to film her. And the story that he creates with his mother's death ends up being a project he uses for a school artistic expression kind of thing. And he decides to make the movie his submission. And he's getting her like cooking meals and going to different places, and then she ends up going to the hospital for some of her visits, and he'll record her doing that, and then eventually she ends up staying in the hospital. And then the final day comes where she's supposed to die, and he just can't do it. And I do want to preface this once again, he is probably in middle school or early high school, so he's a young kid. So the idea of being able to handle death is something that's still young. He's young, and the final request to film his mother's death is something that I couldn't imagine being asked that by my own mother, even at my age, mid-20s. Like, I couldn't imagine my mom being, hey, I want you to record my final moments and everything in the way that she did. And what I mean by that is, oh, we're going to do this, 9 months or so before I go, and you're going to record me, and you're going to see that slow progression of, hey, she's dying, and then she says, I want my final moments to be recorded. And that's a heavy burden to have to undertake, I would say, in a way that was handled where you find out that she was actually kind of abusive. And that's kind of the twist that you get towards the last 3/4 of the book, that she wasn't always so nice. So whenever he would go and record like a nice sunset or whatever scene it might be that he decides to want, she'd be like, oh, you need to delete that, we're not going to have that, that's pointless, it's worthless. And her final words for her son in her death was, I would expect nothing less, he's a worthless son. Or even in death, he'll be worthless, or something to that extent, where her last thoughts and words and prayers for her son was, worthless. Which luckily Yuta didn't get to hear because he wasn't there for it. He ended up running away. And I can't say that I blame him. And the only other person that knows what the final words of his mom was his dad. So this all happens, makes a movie after she passes away. And he ends up, the last half of his movie, since he didn't get the actual ending of his mother dying, he edits into some explosions and stuff, and the hospital catches on fire, and he gets made fun of for that from the classroom, because why would you do that? Your mother is actually dying, and your mother actually died, and this is how you want to honor her legacy, is by having the hospital she was in, that she died in, explode as you walk away. And everyone made fun of him besides one girl whose name is Eri. And she ends up finding him right before he goes and attempts to go commit suicide. She was on top of the hospital, and he recorded a little snippet of him saying, "Oh, this will be my final thing. I'm gonna go take my life in the same place my mother did, and yada yada yada. I'm sorry, Dad." And he goes up there, and she ends up saying, "Hey, didn't you make that movie?" Starts a conversation, and she said, "Hey, before you do that, why don't you go make another movie?" And takes him to an abandoned building. She sets up a projector, and they end up watching some movies together, and they're talking. And she kind of is going to take on the managerial kind of role where she's going to say, "Hey, we're going to brainstorm ideas. I'm going to, we're going to do this like Hollywood. We're going to watch movies every single day so that way you know how movies are done, and we're going to sit there and improve your skills." And the book kind of follows her and his time together, where they are watching movies together. They are doing these things together, having these conversations that will improve his skills. And I learned a couple things along the way as well, like, how they plot, or just what to kind of think of when you're storyboarding the movie. And you end up seeing that she's the only one that believes in him. She's the only one that has hope for him. And he is kind of the glue, the anchor to him staying alive. And I don't want to say that this is a lovey-dovey story, because it's not really a love story, but it's one where you get that combination of hope together. And she wants a movie out of him because she liked the movie that she saw before, and she thinks that he can do better, or she knows that he can do better. And he is just wanting to go along because she gave him a purpose. The entire plot of his movie that he ends up coming up with is he's going to record Eri. And we come to find out that Eri is going to die. And in similar fashion of his mom, he is going to record her final moments and tell her story. And he ends up creating a twist to it, because she said there needs to be a twist because you're basically remaking the same first movie that you did, last time. And the twist is that she's going to be a vampire girl, and she's dying because she's not going to eat or something like that. It's a little bit kind of blurry right there. They kind of explain it, but it doesn't really make too much more sense to me. But they end up being a kind of like a love interest a little bit in that, I guess. But I don't think it actually goes further in what maybe typical slice of lives, or these coming of age stories you'd want. And you see her final moments where she starts getting a little sicker. She gets a little bit sicker. She ends up being in the hospital. She's stuck in the hospital, and he actually gets her final moments. There's even some fun parts in the movie where the dad gets involved, and apparently you hear that even when he was a younger boy, he wanted to potentially pursue a, I don't know if a career is the right word, but he liked to play around with the idea of filmmaking and give some good tips as well. And you have that moment where the dad rejects Eri, but it's actually all staged. And it's lovely to see the dad be willing to go along with his son's artistic expression. And you see a healing kind of moment where he apologized to his son, where he says, "I noticed that your mom did these things, but I just used excuses like I was at work, or I had to go do this or whatever, providing for the family. And I'm sorry I never stood up for you, son, to your mother when she was being a little mean." And I don't know, there's these little moments where I can feel my heart beginning to put the pieces back together. And it feels good. It's not good enough, but it has to be good enough. And at least there's something there to try to glue together the shambles of losing a mother and then finding out the friend that you've been hanging out with for however long is going to pass away. And that bond is not going to go away, but they're going to go away, and all you're going to be left with is a memory. And once again, Eri will pass away. He gets the final moments, and then he adds more of the vampiric kind of flavor twist, and he makes another movie and he presents it, and it goes well. And then you have the confrontation of the students saying, Eri was kind of a jerk. She wasn't nice, but you made her look nice. And he admits, "Yeah, I did. That's how I want to remember her by." And the student goes, "That's nice. I think I want to remember the Eri that you showed us, not the one that I remembered. I appreciate this." And in a one-to-one parallel, he did the same thing with his mom, where the mother was abusive to him. The mother was this sort of character, but in the movie that he created, the mother was loving. The mother was kind. She was caring. She was a good person. And that is the kind of person that we're going to be remembering as well. And maybe the explosion was kind of his own way of expressing no, she wasn't perfect, but the disrespect ends up getting put on Yuta's head rather than the mother's head. Meanwhile, this one is like the redemptive act of Eri's gonna have a legacy that is nice. And her being there in his life, Eri being there in his life, caused such a ripple of effect where he no longer, committed suicide. He stayed alive. He made a movie. He pursued it. He gained up these skills and continued on. And we get a final scene where he's like 40 years old. And he got married. He has kids. He still edits the final movie with Eri. That's like his lifelong obsession. He just keeps editing it. Even though he has a wife, he's still editing it. He's still obsessed with it. He still finds moments where if he has free time, he's going to go back to the video. And we see him going into the abandoned house again. And he enters that room. And there is Eri. And she's watching movies. And he's older now, but she's still the same age. And she said, "This one's my favorite. This one reminds me of who I was and who you are and what you meant to me." And though she is still cold and still kind of that jerk that we kind of saw the student say, and she's not the person that we saw in the movie that he made or got along the way with the book entirely. She's just an obsessed person who loves movies. She's still alive. And she kind of gives us a nice word of closing where I like to believe that Yuta could finally stop editing the movie. He could finally make peace. And whether or not this is real or if this is a figment of his imagination, I can't tell. I don't know if it's reincarnation or not. They kind of make it believe to where it is, but who am I to say? It's all for our own interpretation, but I believe when he entered that room, Yuta walked out a changed man in a way that hopefully he's able to finally just get that peace. And it's handled so beautifully. It tells such a emotional and just a story that I never experienced. And there's a sick part of me that wants to experience it again. I think I just like being pain. Maybe I just like the masochism, but it was nice. And I was left staying up at night thinking over both this one and Look Back. And it did something to me. And I think I'll be a better person for it. So, yes, Goodbye Eri is a phenomenal read. And I believe from what I'm seeing online, they made a movie of it. I never watched it. If they did, and if they didn't, then I apologize for spreading fake news. Let me see. Yes. There is no anime movie, but there is strong talks that there might be one. So I guess there's just rumors. So I guess we'll see if there is going to be something like that in the works in the future. But just phenomenal. Phenomenal. If you made it this far, leave a like. If you have any comments, leave them there. If you have any recommendations for mangas to look at, whether one shot or long, I'd love to see what you have. And if it's bad, I'll laugh and keep it to myself. And if it's good, then who knows what's going to happen. I might make a video in the future. So yeah, I think that's all. Until next time, I'll see you later. Bye.